The explosion lit up the darkness of space like a dying sun. Commander Zyrith Talvos stood on the bridge of his flagship and watched another one of his warships break apart. The crew of 3,000 souls vanished in a flash of fire and metal. He did not have time to mourn them. There were too many dying today. Commander, the enemy is breaking through our left formation, his tactical officer reported, his voice shaking with fear. Zyrith looked at the holographic display in front of him. Red dots covered the screen like a disease spreading across healthy flesh. Each red dot was an enemy ship. Each blue dot was one of his own. There were far more red dots than blue ones now. The Ketharan swarm had arrived 3 months ago. Nobody knew where they came from. Nobody knew what they wanted. They did not talk. They did not negotiate. They simply attacked and consumed everything in their path. Their ships were not made of metal like normal vessels. They were alive. Giant creatures of flesh and bone that swam through the void of space like predators hunting prey. Pull back the Third Fleet to defensive positions around Sonara Prime, Zyrith ordered. His voice was calm even though his hearts were racing. He had 2 hearts, like all Velthari. Right now, both of them felt heavy with grief. Sonara Prime was a beautiful world. 12 million of his people lived there. Families, children, farmers and artists and teachers. They were counting on him to protect them. He was failing. Commander, we cannot hold this position much longer, his first officer said quietly. She was young, barely 40 cycles old. But she had aged 10 cycles in the past 3 months. War did that to people. I know, Zyrith replied. But we will hold as long as we can. Every minute we fight is another minute for the evacuation ships to escape. He watched as another Ketharan bioship crashed into one of his cruisers. The living vessel wrapped itself around the metal hull like a snake crushing its prey. Acid poured from its skin, melting through armor that had taken years to build. The cruiser's crew had perhaps 30 seconds to live. Zyrith hoped they spent those seconds thinking of someone they loved. The Velthari coalition had ruled this sector of the galaxy for over 3,000 years. 7 species had joined together in peace and cooperation. They had built great cities on hundreds of worlds. They had created art and music and literature that would be remembered for ages. They had believed that civilization and wisdom would always triumph over barbarism and violence. They had been wrong. The Ketharan did not care about civilization. They did not appreciate art. They could not be reasoned with or bargained with. They existed only to consume and grow. In 6 months, they had destroyed 42 worlds. Billions of lives had been lost. The greatest military force in the sector had been reduced to scattered remnants fighting desperate holding actions. The evacuation is complete, his communications officer reported. The last transport has jumped to hyperspace. Zyrith felt a small moment of relief. At least some would survive today. All ships, fall back to Rally Point 7. We live to fight another day. His fleet, what remained of it, began to retreat. The Ketharan did not pursue. They never pursued fleeing enemies. Why would they? They had already won. They descended on Sonara Prime like locusts falling upon a wheat field. Zyrith turned away from the viewport. He could not watch what came next. 3 days later, he stood before the Coalition Council on Velthara, the capital world. The council chamber was a magnificent hall of crystal and light, built to represent the unity and hope of 7 species working together. Today it felt like a tomb. We have tried everything, Admiral Kes Morvan said. She was the oldest member of the council, a veteran of wars that had ended before Zyrith was born. Her scales had turned gray with age, but her eyes were still sharp. Our weapons cannot destroy their ships faster than they regenerate. Our tactics cannot counter their numbers. Our soldiers cannot match their ferocity. Then what do you suggest? Asked Councillor Bren Talvos, Zyrith's own uncle. That we surrender? The Ketharan do not accept surrender. They only accept consumption. The chamber fell silent. Everyone knew he spoke the truth. There was no negotiating with the swarm. There was no peace treaty to be signed. There was only victory, or extinction. A young diplomat stood up. Her name was Kira Mol-san, and she had only joined the council 6 months ago. Many of the older members did not take her seriously. She was about to change that. "There is another option," she said. Her voice was quiet but steady. "We could ask the humans for help." The reaction was immediate. Gasps of surprise, murmurs of disbelief. A few members actually laughed. "The humans?" Admiral Kess said with clear disgust in her voice. "Those primitives? They only discovered faster than light. Travel 100 years ago. They made bar number 5. They have spent most of that time fighting among themselves." "That is exactly why we should ask them," Kira replied. She did not flinch from the criticism. "The humans are violent. They are aggressive. They have been waging war against each other since before they learned to write. Every generation of humans has known conflict. They have refined the art of killing to a degree we cannot imagine." "You speak of them like they are animals," Counselor Bren said. "I speak of them like they are survivors," Kira answered. "Their world has suffered ice ages, plagues, famines, and countless wars, and yet they are still here. They did not survive by being gentle. They survived by being relentless." Zyrith listened carefully. He had studied the humans during his years at the military academy. They were a strange species: soft bodies, short lives, no natural weapons like claws or fangs, and yet they had conquered their entire planet. They had tamed nature itself. They had split the atom and walked on their moon before most species had discovered fire. "The humans are dangerous," Admiral Kess insisted. "If we invite them into our space, we may be trading one enemy for another." "With respect, Admiral," Zyrith spoke up, "we are losing. Our fleet is broken. Our worlds are burning. The Ketharan will reach Velthara within the year. What do we have to lose?" The chamber fell silent again. Nobody had an answer. "I will go to Earth myself," Kira said. "I will ask for their help. If they refuse, we are no worse off than before. If they agree, we may have a chance to survive." The council voted. The decision was close, but in the end, desperation won over pride. Kira Molsan would travel to Earth and ask the most violent species in the known galaxy to save them. As the council adjourned, Zyrith walked beside her. "Do you truly believe the humans can help us?" he asked. Kira looked at him with eyes that held both fear and hope. "I believe the humans are the only species in this galaxy who fight like they have nothing to lose. And right now, that is exactly what we need." 3 days later, her ship departed for Earth. The fate of the coalition traveled with her. The human solar system was nothing like Kira had expected. She had read the reports. She had studied the data, but seeing it with her own eyes was different. It was terrifying. "Ambassador, we are detecting weapon platforms ahead," her pilot said nervously. "Hundreds of them." Kira leaned forward in her seat and stared at the viewport. The pilot was not exaggerating. The space around the outer planets was filled with military installations. Defense stations bristling with guns, automated platforms carrying missiles, entire fields of mines floating in carefully arranged patterns. It looked like the humans were preparing for a full-scale invasion. "Who are they defending against?" Kira whispered to herself. Her science officer checked his instruments. "According to our records, the humans have not encountered any hostile alien species. They built all of this as a precaution." Kira felt a chill run down her spine. The humans had fortified their entire solar system against enemies that did not exist. They had spent vast resources preparing for wars that might never come. What kind of species did such things? The kind that survived, she reminded herself. That was why she was here. A human warship appeared on their sensors. Then another. Then 5 more. Within minutes, Kira's small diplomatic vessel was surrounded by vessels that bristled with weapons. Each human ship was ugly by coalition standards. No graceful curves or elegant designs, just sharp angles and armor plating and guns. So many guns. Unidentified vessel. "This is Captain Jack Morrison of the Terran carrier Relentless." A voice crackled over the communication system. "You have entered restricted space. State your identity and purpose immediately, or you will be destroyed." The voice was cold and professional. There was no warmth in it, no curiosity about meeting aliens for the first time. Just a simple statement of fact. Identify yourself or die. Kira took a deep breath and activated her translator. Captain Morrison, I am Ambassador Kira Mulsan of the Velthari Coalition. I come in peace with an urgent request for your people. May we speak? There was a long pause. Kira imagined the humans checking their weapons, running scans on her ship, searching for any sign of threat. Finally, the voice returned. Follow us to Station Omega. Any deviation from the assigned course will result in immediate termination. The line went dead. Kira looked at her pilot, who was pale with fear. Follow them, she ordered, and do exactly what they say. Station Omega was a massive military base orbiting Mars. Kira counted at least 200 warships docked there. Soldiers marched in perfect formations through the corridors. Weapons were stored in endless rows. The entire station hummed with readiness for war. Captain Jack Morrison met her at the docking bay. He was a tall man with short gray hair and eyes that had seen too much death. He shook her hand firmly, a human greeting she had learned about, and led her to a conference room. You have 1 hour, he said simply. Make it count. Kira told him everything. The Ketharan swarm, the destroyed worlds, the billions dead, the Coalition's desperate situation. She showed him images of the bioships consuming planets. She played recordings of distress calls from dying crews. She held nothing back. Jack listened without expression. His face was like stone. When she finished, he asked only one question. What are you offering in return? Kira had prepared for this. Full access to our technology. Star charts for the entire sector. A formal alliance with the Coalition. Membership in our community of species. Jack nodded slowly. I will transmit your proposal to Earth Command. Wait here. He left the room. Kira waited. 1 hour became 2. 2 became 4. She began to wonder if the humans had decided to ignore her request. Then the door opened, and Jack returned with another human. The woman who entered was shorter than Jack but radiated authority. Her uniform was covered with medals and insignia that Kira did not recognize. Her eyes were sharp and calculating, like a predator sizing up prey. Ambassador Mulsan, I am General Lisa Vance, commander of the Terran Expeditionary Force, the woman said. We have reviewed your proposal. Humanity has decided to accept. Kira felt a wave of relief wash over her. Thank you, General. The Coalition will be forever grateful. Save your gratitude, Lisa replied coldly. We have conditions. She activated a display screen showing a document filled with text. First, all human forces will operate with full tactical autonomy. We will not ask permission before acting. We will not explain our strategies. We fight our way. Kira nodded hesitantly. This was not how Coalition allies operated, but she had expected some demands. Second, we will have unrestricted rules of engagement. No limitations on weapons or tactics. If we decide to use nuclear warheads, we will use them. If we decide to target civilian infrastructure controlled by the enemy, we will target it. No interference. This was harder to accept. The Coalition had rules about warfare. There were things civilized species did not do. But Kira thought about the burning worlds and the dying billions, and nodded again. Third, we reserve the right to pursue total victory. We do not fight to negotiate. We do not fight to reach a settlement. We fight until the enemy is completely destroyed, or we are dead. There is no middle ground. Kira stared at the general. You would accept extinction rather than compromise? Lisa smiled, but there was no warmth in it. Ambassador, humans have been killing each other since we climbed down from the trees. We have fought over land, over resources, over ideas, over nothing at all. We have nearly destroyed ourselves a dozen times. And yet we are still here. Do you know why? Kira shook her head. Because we never stop fighting. Ever. No matter the cost. No matter the odds. We would rather die on our feet than live on our knees. That is what we are offering. Your coalition, allies who will never surrender. Never retreat. Never give up. The room fell silent. Kira understood now why the humans frightened everyone. It was not their weapons, or their ships, or their technology. It was their willingness to embrace destruction. They did not fear death. They had made peace with it long ago. We accept your conditions, Kira said quietly. General Lisa Vance extended her hand. Kira took it. The handshake that sealed the agreement felt like grasping a weapon. 1 week later, the Terran First Fleet departed for Velthari space. 62 warships filled with soldiers who had volunteered for a war against an enemy they had never seen. Admiral Derek Holt commanded from the bridge of his dreadnought, a massive vessel named No Mercy Given. The name told Kira everything she needed to know about human philosophy of war. As the fleet jumped to hyperspace, Captain Jack Morrison stood beside her on the observation deck. "Ambassador, I hope you know what you have done," he said quietly. Kira watched the stars blur as the ships accelerated beyond light speed. "I have saved my people," she replied. Jack shook his head slowly. "You have unleashed humanity on the galaxy. That is not the same thing." He walked away, leaving Kira alone with her thoughts. She wondered if she had made the right choice. She wondered if the galaxy would ever be the same. Deep in her heart, she knew the answer was no. Kareth Station was dying. Commander Zyrith Talvos watched from his damaged flagship as the Ketharan swarm surrounded the massive supply hub. 300 bioships floated in the darkness like hungry predators circling a wounded animal. His own fleet numbered just 60 vessels. Many of them were already damaged from previous battles. Some could barely move. "Commander, the swarm is broadcasting," his communications officer reported. Zyrith knew what the message would say. The Ketharan always said the same thing. He listened anyway. "Surrender and be consumed. Resist and be destroyed. There is no other choice." The voice was not truly a voice. It was a vibration that traveled through space itself, generated by the massive bioship at the center of the enemy formation. The Overmind. The brain of the entire swarm, a creature so old and vast that it remembered stars being born and dying. "What are your orders, Commander?" his first officer asked. Her voice was steady, but Zyrith could see the fear in her eyes. They all knew how this battle would end. Zyrith was about to give the order to fight to the last ship when something appeared on his sensors. Then something more. Then dozens of contacts emerging from hyperspace directly behind the swarm formation. "Commander, we are detecting unknown vessels," his tactical officer said with confusion in his voice. "They are not coalition ships." The vessels were ugly, brutal. Sharp angles and heavy armor, and weapons covering every surface. They looked like instruments of war, given physical form. Zyrith felt his heart begin to race as he recognized the configuration from the intelligence reports. "Those are human ships," he whispered. The Terran First Fleet had arrived. Admiral Derek Holt stood on the bridge of the No Mercy Given and studied the enemy formation. 62 human warships against 300 alien biovessels. The odds were not good. Derek smiled. He liked bad odds. "All ships, this is Admiral Holt." He spoke into the fleet-wide communication channel. His voice was calm and cold. "Weapons free. No quarter given. Kill them all." The human fleet did not hesitate. There was no warning broadcast to the enemy. No demand for surrender. No attempt at communication. The first volley of nuclear missiles was already flying before the swarm understood what was happening. The explosions lit up space like a new constellation being born. 12 bioships vanished in the initial barrage. Their organic hulls, designed to regenerate from conventional weapons, could not survive direct nuclear impacts. The swarm reacted with confusion. They had never faced an enemy that attacked without warning. They had never encountered weapons that could destroy them so quickly. Major Samantha Price watched the battle from the troop bay of her assault shuttle. Around her sat 48 Marines in full combat armor. They were the best soldiers humanity had ever produced. They were also completely insane by coalition standards. "Listen up," Samantha said to her team. Our target is the biocruiser designated Bravo 7. We are going to board it, find its nerve clusters, and destroy them from the inside. Questions? One of her Marines raised his hand. Ma'am, has anyone ever boarded a Ketharan ship before? No, Samantha replied with a grin. We get to be the first. Lucky us. The shuttle launched from its carrier and raced toward the massive bioship. Anti-aircraft fire from the enemy vessel filled space with organic projectiles. The pilot dodged and weaved through the deadly rain with skill born from years of training. They reached the hull and the shuttle's cutting laser burned through the living flesh. Samantha was the first one through the breach. The interior of the bioship was like stepping into a nightmare. Walls made of pulsing meat, air thick with strange smells, tubes carrying fluids that might have been blood, and everywhere, the sound of something breathing. Move out, she ordered. Find the nerve cluster. Kill anything that gets in our way. The Ketharan had never designed defenses against enemies inside their ships. Why would they? No species had ever been crazy enough to try it. But humans were exactly that crazy. Samantha's team pushed through corridor after corridor, burning and cutting their way through the living vessel. Defenders appeared. Blade-limbed creatures that existed only to kill. The Marines met them with gunfire and grenades and knives when they ran out of ammunition. 5 of her soldiers died in the first 10 minutes. She kept moving forward. Lieutenant Chris Grant flew his bomber through the chaos of the space battle. His squadron had been assigned to target the larger bioships with incendiary weapons. Regular explosives damaged the creatures, but they healed too fast. Fire was different. Fire cauterized the wounds. Fire stopped the regeneration. Fox leader to Fox squadron. Target the carrier at bearing 270, Chris commanded. Light it up. 8 bombers dove toward the massive biocarrier. Defensive organisms launched from its surface, trying to intercept them. Chris lost 2 pilots in the approach. He pressed on anyway. His payload of thermite bombs struck the carrier's spine and ignited. The creature screamed. Not through sound, but through the psychic connection that linked all Ketharan. Every being in the swarm felt its pain. The carrier thrashed wildly, crashing into 2 smaller vessels, spreading the fire to them as well. Back on the biocruiser, Samantha reached the nerve cluster. It was a massive organ, pulsing with bioelectrical energy, controlling the entire ship. She planted her charges while her remaining Marines held off wave after wave of defenders. Charges set, she reported. 30 seconds to detonation. All teams fall back to extraction point. They ran. The bioship seemed to understand what was happening. The walls tried to close around them. Acid dripped from the ceiling. The floor became soft and sticky. Trying to trap their feet, Samantha lost 3 more soldiers before they reached the breach. The shuttle was waiting. They jumped aboard and the pilot accelerated away as fast as the engines could manage. Behind them, the charges detonated. The nerve cluster exploded, and the biocruiser went dark. Without its brain, the massive creature was just dead meat floating in space. The battle raged for 11 hours. The humans lost 18 ships. The swarm lost over 200. For the first time in recorded history, the Ketharan retreated. The Overmind, damaged and confused, ordered its remaining forces to fall back to regroup. Commander Zyrith watched the enemy flee with disbelief in his eyes. He had fought the swarm for months. He had never seen them retreat. He had never imagined it was possible. Admiral Derek Holt's voice came through the communication system. Coalition Commander, this is Admiral Holt. Kareth Station is secure. What are your casualty figures? Zyrith checked his reports. We lost 12 ships, Admiral. Approximately 4,000 crew members. There was a pause. We lost 18 ships and 6,000 crew, Derek replied. They died well. We will honor them by killing more of the enemy. Zyrith did not know how to respond to that. In coalition culture, the death of soldiers was a tragedy to be mourned. The humans seemed to view it as a transaction, lives spent in exchange for victory. Admiral, thank you for your assistance, Zyrith finally said. Your tactics were unconventional, but effective. Derek's laugh was cold. Commander, you have not seen anything yet. This was just the beginning. We are going to hunt down every last one of these creatures and burn them out of existence. The communication ended. Zyrith looked at the human fleet regrouping in the distance. Their ships were battered and scarred, but already preparing for the next battle. The crews were not celebrating their victory, they were reloading their weapons. For the first time since the war began, Zyrith felt hope. It was mixed with fear, but it was hope nonetheless. The humans had arrived. And they had come to win. The war had changed. For months, the Velthari coalition had been losing. World after world had fallen to the Ketharan swarm. Billions had died. Hope had become a distant memory. But now, 6 months after the humans arrived, everything was different. Sergeant Matt Cooper crouched in the mud of Delith IV, a world that had been conquered by the swarm 3 months earlier. The sky was red with smoke. The air smelled like death. Around him, his squad of 12 Marines waited in silence. They had been crawling through this wasteland for 3 days, avoiding enemy patrols, eating cold rations, sleeping in shifts. None of them complained. This was what they were trained for. Target is 200 meters ahead, Matt whispered into his radio. Spawning pool confirmed. I count approximately 50 defenders. The voice of Captain Amy Sullivan came through his earpiece. Confirmed, Sergeant. Proceed with the mission. The spawning pools were how the Ketharan created new soldiers. Massive lakes of organic material where new creatures grew and emerged ready to fight. The Coalition had tried to destroy these pools with orbital bombardment, but the swarm always protected them with defensive shields. A ground assault was the only option. Matt signaled his team to move forward. They crawled through the mud until they reached the edge of the pool. The sight was horrifying. Hundreds of half-formed creatures floated in the thick liquid, growing limbs and eyes and teeth as he watched. In a few days, they would emerge as fully grown warriors ready to kill. Matt pulled a canister from his pack. Inside was a chemical agent developed by human scientists specifically for this mission. It would not kill the creatures. It would do something worse. It would sterilize the biomass, making it impossible for anything to grow there ever again. Deploying the package, he said quietly. He threw the canister into the pool. The chemical spread rapidly, turning the thick liquid from dark red to pale gray. The half-formed creatures began to dissolve. The pool that would have spawned 10,000 warriors became useless sludge. The swarm defenders noticed too late. By the time they reached the pool, Matt and his team were already gone, disappearing into the wilderness to find the next target. Commander Amy Sullivan stood on the bridge of her cruiser, the Silent Hunter, and studied the star map. Red dots marked swarm-controlled systems. Green dots marked coalition territory. Blue dots marked something new. Human operational zones. How many supply worlds have we destroyed this month? She asked her tactical officer. 17, Commander. The swarm's regeneration capability in this sector has dropped by approximately 40%. Amy nodded with satisfaction. This was her strategy. The Ketharan bioships needed organic matter to heal and grow. They harvested this matter from planets they had seeded with special organisms. Without these supply worlds, the swarm's greatest advantage became a crippling weakness. The Coalition had known about these supply worlds but had never targeted them. Their rules of warfare prohibited attacking planets, even enemy-controlled ones. They considered it uncivilized. Humans had no such restrictions. Amy's task force had spent 3 months systematically destroying every supply world in 2 sectors. They used nuclear weapons to scorch the surfaces. They deployed biological agents to poison the soil. They left nothing alive. The swarm ships in those sectors were now slowly starving, unable to repair damage, unable to grow new defenders. Commander, we are receiving a communication from Coalition Command, her communications officer reported. Ambassador Molsan is requesting a meeting. Amy sighed. She knew what this was about. Kira Molsan arrived on the Silent Hunter 2 days later. Her face showed the strain of the past months. She had become the primary liaison between the Coalition and the human forces. It was not an easy job. Commander Sullivan, I must speak with you about your tactics, Kira said as they sat in the conference room. Amy poured herself a cup of coffee. The humans had brought their own supplies from Earth. They did not trust alien food. What about my tactics, Ambassador? You are destroying entire worlds, poisoning planets that might have been saved. The Council is concerned that these methods are too extreme. Amy took a sip of her coffee. It was cold, but she did not care. Ambassador, how many coalition worlds have fallen to the swarm since we arrived? Kira paused. 3. And how many fell in the 6 months before we arrived? Another pause. 42. Amy set down her cup. We are winning. For the first time in this war, you are winning. Is that not what you wanted? We wanted to be saved, not to become like the enemy, Kira replied. Amy leaned forward. Her eyes were hard. Let me tell you something about humans. Ambassador. We do not fight fair. We never have. When we face an enemy that wants to destroy us, we do not worry about being civilized. We worry about survival. Your people hired us because we are good at war. This is what being good at war looks like. Captain Kevin Rhodes sat in the research facility on the human carrier Vengeance and watched the scientists work. On the table before them was a captured Ketharan hive mind node, a small creature, about the size of a human head, that served as a communication relay for the swarm. They had captured it alive during a boarding operation. It is still conscious, the lead scientist reported. We can begin the extraction. Kevin nodded. Proceed. The scientists began cutting into the creature while it was still alive. Coalition medical ethics would have forbidden such a thing. Human military necessity demanded it. The creature's psychic screams echoed through the room, but the scientists continued their work. 3 hours later, they had what they needed. The frequencies the swarm used for communication, the codes that coordinated their attacks, the weaknesses in their hive mind network. Information that would have taken years to discover through normal means. Send the data to Admiral Holt, Kevin ordered, and dispose of the specimen. The creature was still alive when they put it in the incinerator. Kevin did not watch it burn. He had already moved on to planning the next operation. General Lisa Vance received the intelligence report on her flagship. She smiled as she read the findings. With this information, human electronic warfare specialists could jam swarm communications during battle. The hive mind that made them so dangerous could be turned into a liability. Her communications officer approached. General, Ambassador Molson has submitted a formal complaint about our interrogation methods. Lisa did not look up from the report. File it with the others. She is requesting a meeting to discuss our rules of engagement. Now Lisa looked up. Her eyes were cold. Tell the ambassador that 11 billion coalition citizens have been consumed by the swarm. 11 billion. When the Ketharan showed mercy to those people, we will show mercy to the Ketharan. Until then, we will continue to do whatever is necessary to win. The officer nodded and left. Lisa returned to her planning. The final offensive was coming. The human fleet had been preparing for months, gathering intelligence, destroying supply lines, weakening the enemy at every opportunity. Soon, they would strike at the swarm's home system. They would destroy the Overmind and end the war forever. The Ketharan had never known fear before the humans arrived. Now, for the first time in their ancient existence, they understood what it meant to face an enemy that would never stop, never surrender, never show mercy. The humans were coming for them, and there was nowhere in the galaxy they could hide. The Ketharan home system was a place of nightmares, a dark nebula filled with swirling clouds of gas and dust, hiding stars that had been old when the universe was young. For millions of years, the swarm had called this place home. They had spread from here to consume countless worlds. They had returned here to breed and grow and become stronger. Now, 400 warships waited at the edge of the nebula. Coalition vessels and human dreadnoughts gathered together for the largest military operation in galactic history. They were going to destroy the swarm forever. Admiral Derek Holt stood on the bridge of the No Mercy Given and looked at the darkness ahead. Somewhere in that nebula was the Overmind, the ancient intelligence that controlled the entire swarm. Kill it, and the war would end. Fail, and everything they had fought for would be lost. All ships, this is Admiral Holt, he broadcast to the fleet. Today we finish what we started. Today we burn these monsters out of existence. No prisoners. No mercy. No retreat. He paused and took a breath. Around him, his crew waited in perfect silence. They wanted to consume the galaxy. Now the galaxy has come for them. All ships, advance. The fleet moved into the nebula like a wave of steel and fire. The swarm was waiting for them. Thousands of bioships emerged from the darkness, more than anyone had expected. The Overmind had called every creature it controlled back to defend its home. This was the last stand of an ancient species. The battle began with fire. Human nuclear missiles streaked through space, detonating among the enemy formations. Coalition beam weapons carved through bioship hulls. The swarm responded with overwhelming numbers, surrounding the Allied fleet and attacking from all directions. Commander Zyrith Talvos fought from the bridge of his rebuilt flagship. After months of fighting alongside the humans, he had learned their ways. No hesitation. No mercy. Fight until you win, or die. Target the cluster at bearing 350, he ordered. All weapons fire. His ship unleashed everything it had. 3 bioships exploded. 5 more took their place. Captain Beth Lawson commanded the carrier, Relentless now. Captain Jack Morrison had died at Kareth Station, ramming his previous ship into an enemy vessel to save a transport full of refugees. Beth intended to honor his memory with victory. Launch all fighters, she commanded. Combat spread. Engage at will. 200 small craft poured from her ship's hangars, diving into the enemy formation like angry insects. They were outnumbered 10-1. They attacked anyway. Major Samantha Price led the marine assault on the Overmind's flagship. The massive bio-vessel was the size of a small moon, ancient and terrible. Killing it would be the hardest thing she had ever done. All teams, we are going in, she announced as her shuttle approached the living mountain. Remember your training. Remember why we are here. And remember that these things killed billions of innocent people. The shuttle burned through the hull and the Marines poured out. The interior of the Overmind's vessel was unlike anything Samantha had seen before. The walls moved and breathed. Eyes watched from organic growths. The air itself seemed alive with hatred. Move forward, she ordered. Find the central cortex. We end this now. The defenders came in waves. Blade-limbed creatures. Acid-spitting horrors. Things with too many eyes and not enough mercy. The Marines killed them all. They had trained for this moment their entire lives. Every shot was perfect. Every movement was precise. They were death incarnate. But the swarm had numbers. For every creature that fell, 3 more appeared. Samantha watched her soldiers die one by one. Corporal Martinez went down fighting off 3 attackers at once. Sergeant Kim was dissolved by acid while holding a corridor. Private Torres used his last grenade to take out a nest of defenders, sacrificing himself so the others could advance. Samantha kept moving. She had started with 48 Marines. By the time she reached the central cortex, only 7 remained. The cortex was a vast chamber filled with pulsing organic matter. In the center floated the Overmind's core consciousness, a mass of neural tissue the size of a building. It had controlled the swarm for millions of years. It had consumed countless civilizations. Today, it would die. Plant the charges, Samantha ordered. Her surviving Marines spread out, placing explosives at key points around the chamber. The Overmind spoke. Not through sound, but through a psychic broadcast that penetrated every mind in the chamber. You cannot destroy me. I have existed since before your species crawled from the mud. I will exist long after your bones have turned to dust. Samantha finished arming the last charge and looked up at the ancient intelligence. You talk too much. She pressed the detonator. Sergeant Tony Marsh was the last one standing between Samantha and the exit. Defenders were pouring into the chamber, trying to stop the humans from escaping. Tony's ammunition was gone. His knife was broken. He had nothing left but his body and his will. Go, Major, he said calmly. I will hold them. I will hold them. Crom. Cromandun. Cromandun. Cromandundun. 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 Cromandundundundun. Cromandundundundundundundun. Cromandundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundundund He had saved her life more times than she could count. "That is an order, Tony," she said, her voice cracking. Tony smiled. "Yes, ma'am. It has been an honor." "That's ma'am." "Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. It has been an honor." He charged into the mass of defenders with nothing but his fists and his fury. Samantha ran for the exit, tears streaming down her face behind her helmet. The charges detonated. The Overmind's cortex exploded in a storm of fire and force. Samantha felt the psychic scream tear through her mind as millions of years of consciousness ended in a single moment. Outside, the effect was immediate. Swarm vessels across the battlefield went berserk. Without the Overmind's coordination, they lost all control. Some crashed into each other. Some attacked randomly. Some simply drifted, their purpose gone. Admiral Derek Holt watched the chaos unfold with grim satisfaction. All ships. Clean up operations. Destroy every last one of them. The battle lasted another 6 hours. When it was over, the Ketharan swarm had been erased from existence. Not defeated, not pushed back, exterminated. The human fleet had lost 43 ships. Over 8,000 soldiers had died. Among them was Tony Marsh, whose body was never recovered. Weeks later, the coalition held a ceremony to honor the dead and celebrate the victory. Commander Zyreth stood beside General Lisa Vance as the names of the fallen were read aloud. It took 3 hours to read them all. "How do you live with it?" Zyreth asked quietly. "The cost of what you do?" Lisa looked at the memorial wall where the names had been carved. "We do not forget them. That is how we honor their sacrifice. We remember. And we make sure they did not die for nothing." Ambassador Kira Mulsan watched the human delegation from across the ceremony hall. They stood apart from the other species, their expressions unreadable. They had saved the coalition. They had won the war, and yet they seemed neither happy nor proud. She approached General Lisa Vance after the ceremony ended. "General, may I ask you something?" May I ask you something?" Lisa nodded. "Will humanity ever know peace?" Lisa was quiet for a long moment. "I hope so, Ambassador. But I would not bet on it. Peace is not in our nature. We were born fighting. And we will probably die fighting. But at least we will die free." She walked away, leaving Kira alone with her thoughts. The stars shone through the windows of the ceremony hall. They were safe now. The swarm was gone. The coalition would rebuild. But as Kira watched the human ships depart for Earth, she felt a strange mix of gratitude and fear. Humanity had saved them from one monster. She wondered if they had invited another into their midst. The galaxy would never be the same again. The humans had made sure of that. For better or worse, the universe now knew that somewhere among the stars, there was a species that would never surrender, never compromise, never stop fighting, and that was both the greatest hope and the greatest fear the galaxy had ever known.